Hi, how are you?
I am good. This is Melinda Roy. Welcome to Day 4 Global Virtual Summit 2026. Hope you are enjoying our sessions. So many beautiful women have shared their inspiring and motivational presentations today. And
Mhm.
so, before you start your presentation, I would like to introduce you to the audience. So, welcome on stage, Dr. Wanda. So, Dr. Wanda is a trauma informed clinical clinician, global advocate, and founder and CEO of We Are Survivors, an international nonprofit supporting survivors of abuse. She is also a licensed clinical mental health therapist and leads the McKinley counseling firm specializing in trauma recovery and emotional wellness. A survivor herself, Dr. Wanda combines lived experience with clinical expertise to empower individuals toward healing and restoration. She holds a doctorate in community care and counseling traumatology, is an award-winning humanitarian best-selling author and international speaker committed to help survivors reclaim their voice and rebuild their lives. She is from United States of America. So welcome on stage, Dr. Wanda. The stage is all yours. Good luck.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I was trying to get my slides up, but what I'm going to be talking about today is something that is very dear to my heart. And it deals with intimate partner violence. And it's really centered around how Black churches navigate through intersections of faith, cultural, safety, and social work when they're dealing with intimate partner violence. This is something that I actually did this is my dissertation. And because I just recently did this research and it was so powerful that my um, professors actually, okay, so it's showing up. Um, and they encouraged me to share this. So I do want to go through this. So the agenda, so the purpose of the study, I'm going to talk about the purpose of why I did this, the significance of the study, the methodology that I used when I was doing this study, the analysis, the research questions that I used to ask congregants within the church. So the congregants within the church are the women that actually experience intimate partner violence, and either they did or they did not go to the church for help, and the results of what happened to those women who actually reached out. We're going to talk about the results of this research, the limitations that I faced during this type of research, discuss the findings, and then again, suggestions for further research because my research is not stopping here. I am going to incorporate more churches and actually come up with workbooks to actually help guide churches of all colors to be able to help when their women and their men come to them in regards to dealing with something that's extremely private. Okay. So we're going to talk about the purpose of the study, which is the next slide. Let's see. Okay, so the purpose of the study is we're going to identify barriers and develop culturally and theologically responses and the strategies for how churches, Black faith churches, can better support survivors of intimate partner violence. And then the next slide, which is the significance of the study. So, the importance of understanding why something like this needed to be done. We do have the practical side of it, and the practical side, we're going to be able to guide faith based training. So, we're going to identify training that's needed. going to also bridge faith and service because there seems to be some miscommunication, like a gap when it comes to combining these two. Then we're going to empower clergy leadership so that they understand the importance of not just quoting scriptures, but actually providing their members with help. Also, what we're going to do is we're going to promote community healing and drive social change. Another part, which is the next slide, of this study is to fill critical research gaps, expand on this theory, which is why I'm continuing this study, because we want to generate qualitative insights and also contributes to scholarships. It's very, very important that as a community, we come together to be able to share knowledge. So the next slide is the methodology. And what this means is, so I did a qualitative approach. And I chose qualitative approach because it's going to be more rich, it prioritizes rich and descriptive and interpretive insights into human experience. And because I was actually interviewing women of the church, I also interviewed women of leadership. This particular process allows me to address intimate partner violence in a spiritual, cultural, and the social issue that it is. It helps shape the theological and community norms. And it also allowed me to become more deeply engaged with the narratives and the beliefs and the scriptural interpretations of women. So that was really important. And I did focus on a particular church. I am located actually here in Dallas, Texas. Okay. And our next slide. So the way I gathered my materials was I went and I did semi-structured interviews. So I gathered clergy and members of the church together to get their perspective on their personal experiences when it came to intimate partner violence. And then far as I did observation, so I actually went to church services. I went to they had actually a conference, and so I went there as well. And then after I gathered all of my information from talking to women to talking to church leadership, and again women that were in church leadership, then I gathered all this documentation, review church materials, their teachings, their policies, and how all of this related to intimate partner violence and how women were actually handled when they came forth about a certain situation that they were dealing with. Okay, next slide. Because I was handling very sensitive information, I wanted to make sure that it was ethically done. So the information that it was private, it was confidential. Um, the participants of my research, they signed release forms. I wanted to make sure that my interviews, how they were structured, and that they were focused on making sure that the individual was okay with the line of questioning because I didn't want to trigger women because again, a lot of times how we feel is overlooked. And so it was very important for me to make sure that in my process of this research, to highlight and identify the struggles that women go through when they have to reveal something that's intimate that has happened to them in a place that's really supposed to be sacred. I wanted to make sure that I didn't re-trigger them or cause them any more harm. And so once I gathered this information in a very sacred and secure place, then my process of my analysis starts. And I want to discuss on the next slide how I gathered my information, and how I made sure is actually the next slide, the analysis, page 1. So with the next slide, what it is I did some initial coding. And what that means is I wanted to construct a comprehensive picture of how Black faith-based institutions interpret and responds to IPB. And the way to do this was, again, to illuminate the theological, cultural, and emotional dimensions of a survivor and the support they do or don't get. In my approach, I wanted to identify, analyze, and report patterns or themes with the data that I collected. And it was really important for me to really focus on like a single case study so that I can really reflect on the participants and their lived experiences. And by doing this, again, I collected information from interviews, questionnaires, field notes, and church documents. With the initial coding, I just kind of captured and broke down the data into meaning segments. So these next two slides that I'm talking about, it's just going to explain how my results and how I came about that. So once I did my initial coding, then I did a pattern coding. So I grouped and refined initial codings. Thank you. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. It all goes together, which then helped me with theme development. So with that, make sure that when I gathered this information, I wanted to make sure that I the reflexivity, the using my journals to minimize research bias and truly maintain my focus on my participants. I did record the interviews so that when I did put all of my information together, it was verbatim. And I did not use my wordings. I made sure that when I presented my data, my findings, that it was accurate. Now, the next slide are the questions that I asked these ladies that participated in this research. And the research questions that I asked was, what theological and cultural beliefs motivated the Black clergy's response to IPV or intimate partner violence within their congregation? So how do you all handle, as church leaders, how do church leaders handle when one of their members come to them and say, hey, I'm being abused in my own home, or I've experienced rape? How do the church handle these types of members that are struggling? What barriers and challenges do the clergy within a Black church face when responding to intimate partner violence? So again, identifying how can we help improve this communication or this process when a woman comes to a church and says, I need help, these things are happening to me, or I've experienced abuse and I am still struggling with it? What barriers and challenges is the Black church facing? And the final research question was, how does this Black church incorporate community-based or secular resources for intimate partner violence into its response strategies? Because again, in a Black community, a lot of churches do not want to go outside of the church for resources. They refer or do not refer their members to different types of ministries within the Black church. But there are so many great and profound circular resources that if the church collaborated outside in the community, that they would probably be able to help their members a lot better. So the next slide is the participants, and I did use fictitious names because again, everything was private. So I had 7 participants, and the ages range from 45, or actually 35 to 64. Again, this is all females. Two of my participants were actually church leadership. That was not planned, but it changed the trajectory of my research. And of course, everyone had to have experience with intimate partner violence, and they had to be a member of a church for 6 months or longer because they had to also participate. Okay, next slide. Now we go into what was identified from doing this research in the field with women and churches. So, for the women that actually talked about how they were responded to or the lack of response. So, six of them mentioned that churches lacked resources, they lacked training. uh, Three mentioned they talk about theological interpretations. Now, the theological interpretations, again, is a whole different type of conversation in its own, because in the Black church, the most common thing we hear is go pray about it. Well, if a person is praying and have been praying, then again, I need more guidance. I need something else. Like, okay, is there some researches for counseling? What else can I do besides pray about it? So a lot of times theological interpretations is a really big speed bump for some people. Church and their power dynamics, again, a hierarchy. And a lot of Baptist churches, the men run the church. So if you are a woman that has gone through some abuse, and I really need to speak to someone that's going to understand me, then that is a barrier that a lot of women run into, is that a lot of church leadership are men. And if they've been hurt and abused by a man, some women felt very uncomfortable going to a man. Fear of church gossip or betrayal. Again, the church is supposed to be a safe place for women, yet they fear being talked about. Some women talked about church hurt and broken trust, fear of retaliation and being exposed. Again, I'm supposed to be able to come to the church and bare my soul, but I'm afraid that if I do that, then I'm going to be the outcast. Two women talked about cultural silence and stigma. So now I'm going to have a stereotype on my back. A lot of women did not want to have to deal with that. Pressured by church teachings. We are taught as women that we are supposed to stand by our man. And we are taught sometimes, take her home, silence, not speaking out. So again, am I supposed to seek help or am I trapped? And so these are some of the women, some of the things that women identify. The next slide talks about the theological beliefs. So women believe that we're supposed to be submissive. So if I'm in a very abusive relationship with my husband, I'm not allowed to say anything. It's my duty. I'm supposed to submit to my husband. Again, and that's when we go back to talking about theological misinterpretations. These are some. Forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgive him. But this man is hurting me. And I need some guidance. I need some help on how do I navigate through what I'm going through. But again, we have forgiveness and reconciliation that we deal with. Divorce is a sin. So many of us are taught that we were married, right? And God put you together. So if you divorce, then you're not being obedient by God's wishes. So again, the belief that divorce is a sin. You keep your family together at all costs. It doesn't matter. So with this, a lot of women will do what they have to do because they feel like this is the only option for them. God will fix the relationship through prayer. Again, this encourages spiritual reliance over practical intervention. And we just want to make sure that theological teachings, yes, they emphasize forgiveness, submissions, and endurance, but it does not contribute to, and it doesn't say for women to remain silent. And it's not to discourage seeking help, but it's revealing how faith-based beliefs can both support and constrain individuals in crisis. The next slide talks about what the church offered. So as we look at the next slide, the church really didn't offer much. One experience, they offered counseling. They didn't offer any shelter, housing, any safety planning. One received mental health support. There was no legal assistance. Nothing was offered. And because of the lack of support from the church, some women never even disclosed, never even went to their church to say, hey, I need help. So when we go to the next one, we kind of break down the results even more on the next slide. So I capture like some themes. So we have spiritual sanctuary, which the church is often viewed as a place for emotional and spiritual refuge. That's how it is viewed in the Black community. But then we have institutional silence. So the participants reported they were very discouraged from disclosing intimate partner violence within a church setting. That's supposed to be the place that women go for help. Scripture misinterpretation, again, the misuse of theology to justify or minimize abuse. A lot of women felt this way regarding the church. Informal support, greater reliance on peers and informal networks rather than church leadership. A lot of women turned outside of their church because they felt safer. They turned to different aspects so that they can, hey, feel comfortable in saying, I need help. Somebody please help me. Gender expectations. So again, the norms of the church reinforces women's submission and it limits their agency. It limits how they can receive help that's geared towards them. The post-separation exclusion, feelings of spiritual punishment or alienation after leaving an abusive relationship. Again, versus the church embracing them and loving them and helping them. A lot of times the church shuns them because, again, God put you together and you're supposed to stay married no matter what that's like. Trauma-informed ministries. This was something that was identified that churches needed more of. They needed the pastors, the clergy leadership, they needed more training and more policies when it comes to handling intimate partner violence. And intersectional barriers. Race and gender compounded the challenges that survivors faced. So participants consistently emphasize systematic and cultural issues within their faith communities, underscoring the urgent need for trauma-informed, inclusive, and policy-driven approaches to address intimate partner violence within the church. So the next slide, again, just kind of highlights the different types of barriers and how the certain research questions was able to identify the interview questions, how it linked up to the research questions, the themes that were developed based on these certain questions, and then it tied into the different quotes that a lot of the women said during their interviews. So this interview data shows a clear alignment again between questions and research as it aims to reveal how belief systems, institutional, cultural, and lack of preparedness intersects to shape the church's role in addressing IPV. The church really honestly, many of them are not really prepared to handle intimate partner violence because of the different theological interpretations that we are taught. And again, we are taught different things from growing up. And so because we do not want to challenge change or challenge, is this really factual? We just kind of go along with it. The next one also talks about codes of theme development. And what this is, like the theological foundation. So we have scripture to protect, not bind. Participants challenge harmful interpretations and they emphasize safety centered theology. We need to have faith communities that are viewed as they're spiritually responsible for supporting survivors. Understanding that cultural norms sometimes contradict theological compassions. And then we also have to understand that survivors that bring their lived experience into ministry, if the pastoral groups pay attention, then it allows them to emphasize with them. We have to break fear, stigma, judgment, these things that discourage openness. Churches need to have more written intimate partner violence policies or clear response system to help their members. Clergy needs to be trained in more of a pastoral intervention type thing. So when one of their members come to them about something so personal, they understand how to help. And so this data reveals a movement from individual experiences to systemic insights, again, showing that theological beliefs, institutional culture, and leadership practices collectively will shape how the church is ready or lack thereof to respond to intimate partner violence. Again, this is just another way of the data was collected, understanding that church environments, leadership behaviors, faith messages, they all reflect on how a person perceives the church. If I go to the church, how is my leadership climate? Are they going to be emotionally anchoring? Or are they going to also be emotionally abusive? Trying to understand that the church is there for collective healing and it's their responsibility to be the bridge to help heal those that are hurt by intimate partner violence. So that's what this particular observational data that I actually witnessed through going to the conference and actually attending church services, that during my observations, I revealed that there's a strong warmth and a lot of faith-based compassion, yet there's a significant structural and theological gap when it comes to addressing trauma and intimate partner violence in a church. Again, this underscores the contrast between spiritual intent and institutional readiness. And it's a key tension across both studies. When again, I looked at and compared the interviews versus sitting within the church and witnessing. My limitations for this research, which is the next slide, just briefly, again, I just only focus on a small church. So imagine if this is expanded further, what that would do and what more can be identified. Uh, I did have some women that played a role. They were also in church leadership, but they were also survivors of intimate partner violence. I thought that was very significant because it did add a different perspective to the research. I do want to highlight the next slide because I know we're kind of running low on time, but the themes from the interviews. So I'm at emergent themes from interviews. And with that, just kind of finding and talking about intersection of race, gender, and faith, and how all of that ties into one another. So when I talk about future references or future research, I think to open this up to focus more on women clergy who are also intimate partner violences and address how males in this segment in this part of being in the church and handling how women who are harmed within their homes and how they handle it. So I think it's very important that overall churches, again, of multicultural churches, begin to incorporate trainings so that they can handle intimate partner violence to help these women that feel that the only place they can turn to is to the church. Yet, when they turn to the church, they're shunned or given a cold shoulder. So I appreciate your spending time with me and listening to my research that I just recently did last year. And again, how women, Black women, face the struggles and barriers when coming to their church in regards to intimate partner violence. I thank you. Were there any questions? I don't know where that's. I guess you can stop sharing the slides now.
Wow, that was
Hello? You're muted.
thank
You're,
you,
you're
thank you,
mute.
thank you for the wonderful session. We truly appreciate your contribution to this event, and we have a lot of questions from the audience. So here is the question: what roles does faith play in helping survivors of abuse heal?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that one more time?
What role does faith play in helping survivors of abuse heal?
Mm. I don't know if it's my connection. You said what road? Is there a way you can type that in the chat so I can? I'm sorry because we're having a huge storm here, so the internet's kind of going in and out. My apologies. Is there a way you can type that question in the chat so I can see it?
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you. My apologies. I'm just hoping my internet doesn't go down.
No problem. I'm just typing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What
Once.
role does faith play in helping survivors of abuse heal? Okay. Now this is going to vary per culture, but however, in the Black community, when it comes to faith, we are taught again, as long as you have faith the size of a mustard seed, we are able to accomplish so much. And so when it comes to having faith, it gives us hope. Hope gives us peace. So even in the moment when all seems to be against you, when it seems like nothing is meshing up, if you have faith that tomorrow or the next hour or the next minute is going to be different, it's going to be positive, as long as you have faith when it comes to surviving abuse, I myself, I didn't start off with saying this, but I went through over 24 consecutive years of abuse, which is another reason why I said this is very powerful to me. And when I had faith, it gave me again hope. It gave me sometimes peace when everything around me was loud. It quieted my storm because I know one day something's going to change.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering the question, Dr. Wanda, and thank you so much for participating and sharing your great presentation and contribution to this event. So please do join our next sessions and encourage other speakers as well. And this is the last day event. So this is the 4th day event successfully. We have completed 3 days. And so now we are in 4th day and this is the last day. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.